Hello everybody, and you're very welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be dealing with John Deere. Yes, my favourite, back to the green and yellow of John Deere. So we're going to be dealing with roughly 1960, so that change, that new generation of power that came out in the 1960s, and we're going to be dealing with that line. Pretty much what was the evolution of that line right up into the 80s and in towards the early 90s. So that's we're going to take a quick look at that. I'm not going to dive too much into too much detail. This is going to be a shorter video than normal. It's been a very, very busy week, but yeah, we're going to get into it now in a few minutes. So welcome back to the channel, everybody. To everybody that watched last week's second part of the Muirhill video, thanks a million. Everyone that commented, it's very much appreciated. All my new subscribers, thank you very much for hitting that subscribe button. It means a lot. And indeed to all my regular watchers, people who watch week in, week out, and without fail comment on the channel. There's a couple of dozen people there. You all know who you are. So without your support, this channel wouldn't be here. And it's all very much appreciated. So if you're watching this and if you do like it, if you like what you see, if you like the content, please give it a like, please give it a share, and hit that subscription button if you like. So that's it. So look, today it's Galway. Yeah, it's Friday evening. It's a beautiful day out. It's absolutely stunning. It's just sun is shining. There's a nice cool breeze blowing. Most of the spring barley, the spring crops are in the ground. A few more potatoes to be planted, but the last couple of weeks have been great for farmers to catch up and stuff. And yeah, hopefully now going towards the summer in the next couple of weeks, if not already, there's a lot of farmers going to be shouting for rain. So yeah, we're back to that again. But yeah, so look, we're going to get quickly into it. We're going to get started on John Deere from the 1960s right through to almost into the 1990s. So on August 30th, 1960, John Deere dealers from around the world converged on Dallas, Texas for an unprecedented product showcase which was to be called Deere Day in Dallas, as the event was called. This introduced the world of the new generation of power, the company's first modern 4-cylinder and 6-cylinder tractors, during a day packed with high-tech presentations, live demonstrations, and a parking lot of brand new yellow and green machines. The line of tractors introduced that day was 5 years in the making, and that event itself took months and months to plan. Deere chose Dallas to host the event, partly because it was home to facilities large enough to accommodate the 6,000 guests and the equipment that they were all there to see. So these new generation power tractors that come out in the 1960s, they had been developed, they have been engineered and designed under a huge amount of secrecy. So it's believed that John Deere, it's not believed, it's a fact that John Deere took over a supermarket in the town, in the city of Moline, and they done no branding or anything on it. They secretly took it over. The engineers went to work inside in the supermarket, and this is where the new tractor was, the new line of tractors was engineered, was designed under serious, secrecy acts. You had to sign your life away before you could get into this building. Even a lot of the higher up management within John Deere weren't allowed in. They weren't allowed to know what was going on, because that was a time when Case were also introducing their new line of tractors. So the Case Farmall was, it was coming out around that time, and there was serious competition between the two brands, I should say. So this was under a lot of secrecy. Tractor was not designed in the John Deere factories. It was obviously built and manufactured there, but it wasn't designed, and it wasn't, the engineering drawings were done up in this disused supermarket in the town of Moline. So the Dallas Memorial Auditorium, the Texas State Fairgrounds Coliseum, and the Cotton Bowl parking lot were each the site of part of the event. During the event, a John Deere tractor with a diamond-covered nameplate was displayed for all to see. It was inside a sort of a fancy boutique or department store, Neymar Marcus, I think it was called, which was a popular department store in Dallas at the time. So according to information released by the company at the time of the event, John Deere dealers and key employees came to Dallas via the largest commercial airlift ever of its type attempted. During the 24 hours leading up to this massive event, 16 different airlines brought Deere employees and salespeople from all over the United States and Canada to Love Field in Dallas. So at this time, Bill Hewitt, he was the chairman and CEO of Deere and Company, as it was called. So he welcomed the dealers and introduced the new tractors. Hewitt told the guests they were about to see a line of entirely new tractors, completely modern in every respect, with outstanding features not duplicated in any other make of tractors. So Bill Hewitt, he was married to, I think it was Patricia Deere Wyman, or Patricia Wyman, who was the granddaughter of Charles Deere, or the great-granddaughter of Charles Deere. I just can't fully remember. But it was actually his wife, Bill Hewitt's wife, who was the family member in this in John Deere at that time. So he was obviously married into the family. So he would become the last. So he was the sixth president, but he would also become the last family member of the John Deere family to hold the presidency of the company. Which going back to the 1960s. So since he left, I think in the 80s, I think it was the 80s. There's been no John Deere family member at the helm. So looking at the models then at the time, so what they were in competition with, obviously it was the Farmwell range, the Massey Ferguson 65 and 85, the Oliver 880. Now they had also at the time taken over the plant in Mannheim. So in 1955 or 56 in Germany, in Mannheim, that's where the German range of tractors were built. So I'm going to deal with the American range of tractors here. I will do another video on Mannheim and the Mannheim factory and everything that came out of that. So for today, we're going to carry on with what was then the new generation of power at the time. So I suppose since entering the tractor business in 1918, John Deere had focused on two-cylinder machines, obviously the famous Johnny Poppers. The new generation of power introduced at Deere Day in Dallas was very different from anything Deere had ever built before. So the new line of 4 and 6-cylinder tractors, the models were the 1010, the 2010, the 3010 and the 4010. They were far more powerful than Deere's two-cylinder models, and also easier and more comfortable to operate with convenient located controls, better visibility and improved seat suspension. These new tractors were also easier to service. So the 4010, it was the largest in the range, and it was rated at 80 horsepower in 1960, but tested at 84 horsepower during testing trials, making it one of the most powerful two-wheel drive farm tractors at that time. So the 4020 was the predecessor to the very famous 4020, as you'll see here behind me, the most popular John Deere tractor of all time. I will get into that now in a minute. So the 4020, this was widely regarded as the most popular John Deere tractor ever produced, and perhaps any tractor manufacturer in the United States. So I believe there was something around 185,000 of the 4020s built. Now the 4010 was a fantastic tractor, super machine, strong. Farmers loved it, but the little issues that it had were all ironed out with the 4020, which when you look at it, it just looks like it wants to go to work. Powerful, strong, well built, well designed, and if you put an SG2 cab in that tractor, you could have a tractor from the 1980s, a 2130 or a 2140. The styling is still very, very similar, and the tractors that we've seen in the 1980s, the 40s and 50 series, the last of that line, they were all an evolution of that 10 range and 20 range and the 4020 range of tractors. So though the 4020, which was available with Deere's optional power shift, enjoyed greater popularity, the 4020 moved John Deere into the modern era of farm tractor technology and design, following its successful history as a tractor manufacturer that was, by the late 1950s, experiencing waning market share due to its outdated technology. In addition to the advanced engine technology, the 10 series tractors offered many other upgrades from the other two-cylinder models they replaced, including significantly higher horsepower to weight ratio, advanced hydraulics, more convenient and comfortable operation stations, and many other improvements. So advanced hydraulics, then they went then with the closed center system, which was hugely popular for Deere, which continued on right, as I said, right into the 1980s and the early 1990s with the 50 series. The closed center hydraulic system was unique in that the pump was only pumping when there was a demand on the system. So it wasn't pumping regardless of what load was on. So it was it was new to John Deere at the time. Had its little issues down the line, but anyone that knew anything about them and knew how to service them, they were very, very easy to do anything with. Very easy to diagnose and very easy to service and maintain. So of the 10 series John Deere tractors introduced in 1960, the 4010 obviously was by far the most popular, with more than 58,000 units sold from 1960 to 1963. The success of the 10 series John Deere tractors, led by the 4010, helped propel John Deere from a 23% share market in 1959 to a 34% share market in 1964 when the 4020 was introduced, making it the top manufacturer of farm equipment in the United States at the time. So as regards John Deere in, I suppose, the UK and Ireland that we're all familiar with, Langer is the headquarters for John Deere in Nottingham, Langer in Nottingham. So that was set up in about 1966, I think it was. So that was in the middle of that 20 series revolution, as it was, the 4020. So that's when the dealer network would have started to grow around the UK and in Ireland. And the 4020 would have been, that 20 series would have been the first range of tractors that would have been sold out these dealerships. And in Ireland, I know in the late 1970s, the late 1970s, when the bigger dealerships were set up. So your Mead Farm Machinery then and Templetuohy Farm Machinery, which would be the biggest dealer in Ireland. Between them and Mead Farm Machinery, Templetuohy would be the biggest. They were all set up in the late 1970s, into the early 80s. Mead Farm Machinery was 1979. So yeah, that's when John Deere really started to make a foothold, and the likes of your David Browns at the time were waning out, in your case were coming on board, and there was a big shift in farm machinery, tractors especially, around that time. So looking then at 1973, so Deere introduced its new Soundguard tractors with the 4030, the 4230, the 4430 and the 4630. While these tractors were mechanically similar to the new generation tractors they replaced, and the 42, the 44, the 46, they used the 404 cubic inch displacement engine like the 4020. So the 404 engine was hugely popular and a superbly reliable engine. So they featured redesigned sheet metal, and most importantly, they were available with that optional completely integrated operator's cab known as the SG cab. So the SG1 and the SG2 cabs that John Deere called the Soundguard body. So this insulated cab that included a rollover protective structure and distinctive rounded windshield came equipped with heat and air conditioning, as well as speakers for an optional radio, an 8-track player that was also available as an option. And I would think with the SG2 cab, I think it was a case of you either loved it or you hated it. I personally loved it because I grew up on them, and that's what I learned to learn to drive on an SG2 cab. And I know it has the split in the screen in the middle, but it is a little bit to the left, and when you're sitting with your controls at the right hand side, you do get a lovely clear view. I know the exhaust stack is there obviously, and split in the windscreen, but really when you're used to them, it's not a problem. Other than that, they had a fantastic view. Maybe not as good as your Zeta with your huge cab, but they were very, very comfortable and very quiet. I think it was about 71 or 2 decibels level that they had gotten to, and they were a superb cab. So the 5020 then was replaced by a very similar 6030 and continued in production with the new generation styling until 1977, when that 30 series tractors were replaced by Deere's Iron Horse series that included the 90 horsepower 4040, the 110 horsepower 4240, the 130 horsepower 4440, the 150 horsepower 4640, and of course the 180 4840. So the 42, the 44, the 46 and the 48 featured a new 466 cubic inch engines that became the 466 engine, and improvements to the cab, including optional hydraulic seat for a smoother ride. The Soundguard cab and power shift transmission were standard equipment on the 4840. And yeah, I grew up driving the 40 series, the 4000, so the 4440s and 4240s. I've done a lot of work with them, ploughing mainly in the late 80s, into the early 90s, ones that would have been traded into Mead Farm Machinery where I was working at the time. And yeah, I love driving them. Absolutely, when you're put up in one of them, I know they seem like an old tractor now, but back then when I would have been on them, they would have been maybe a 1980s or an 1981 or 82 model. So they were only really 8 or 9 years old. But I absolutely loved them. I loved driving them. As a 16-year-old, it was just heaven. So the only downside with them was, especially with the 30 series, the 4230 and the 4430, was that tiny little fuel tank. I don't know what John Deere thought they were doing with a 174 litre fuel tank on a big 6-cylinder engine like that. You wouldn't get the day out of it. So if you were doing some heavy ploughing or some heavy PTO work, silage work or something, you wouldn't get the day out of it. They improved then with the 40 series, the 4440, and that would have had a 246 litre tank. They had an extension piece out the front that came underneath the tank that brought the base weight forward so that you could hang your weights on, obviously, because the tank was that bit bigger. Yeah, that was badly needed. That was a huge upgrade for the 40 series. So then again in 1983, there was another upgrade. Deere introduced the popular 50 series, so your 4050, your 4250, 44, 46 and 4850 tractors, and these were very, very popular in Ireland. The larger ones then with baler men, so with large square balers, driving silage harvesters and stuff like that before the day of the self-propels took off. Tillage men as well, then ploughing and stuff like that. So these tractors were essentially the same machines as the Iron Horse 40 series they replaced, but with significant upgrades. They offered that new 15-speed power shift transmission and were available with an optional mechanical front-wheel drive featuring caster action for better traction and a tighter turning circle. So the 40 series had, the 4240S would have had mechanical four-wheel drive. You could get that mechanical four-wheel drive. The rest of them had hydraulic four-wheel drive, which was a little bit of a disaster, a bit of a disappointment. It wasn't four-wheel drive, it was four-wheel assist more than anything. There was no synchronicity really between the back wheels and the front wheels. When you'd be doing something heavy tillage work or something ploughing, the front wheels, it was hard to get the sync of the speeds between the two axles the same. So you'd end up with the front wheels going maybe a time and a half quicker than the back wheels, and you get a nice bit of spray up on the side of the cab. It was a little bit of a disaster. But they were very maneuverable. Yeah, they were great on headlands and stuff like that. So the 50 series then, obviously, they all came with mechanical four-wheel drive and that caster angle that had a superb turn and circle. So they also featured a cosmetic upgrade, including a new light brown cab interior instead of the black of the older machines. These tractors were followed by mechanically similar 55 and 60 series tractors before they were replaced by John Deere's redesigned 7 and 8000 series in the 1990s. So in Ireland, the UK and Europe, we would have had the 55. So your 4255, your 4755 then would have went in the US to a 4760 for the Series 2, but in Ireland and the UK and Europe, they remained as the 55. So the first of the 4755s would have had the exhaust up the middle, as most all 50 series had and 55 series had. But then when they went to the Series 2, that next series, it came up the corner post of the cab. And you had a lovely view across the bonnet, but that's how you distinguish the two. So in the US, that would have been the 60 series, 4760s and 4960s, but they were the exact same as the European tractors, just a different wording on, or different numbering on them. So they were from 1992 until 1996. Yeah, up to 1996. So that SG2, that styling that originally came from the 4010s and that, from 1960 right up until the late or the early 1990s, mid 1990s, when you had that new completely redesigned 7000, 8000 and obviously the 6000 Mannheim built tractors. There was one part from an SG2 cab or an SG2 track style tractor, the 50 series tractor, that was brought over into the new. So if you take a 3650 and a 6800, there's one part that was brought over from one to the other. I don't know if anybody knows what it is, but I was told by a John Deere engineer when the tractors were launched. It was probably in Mead Farm Machinery at the time, I can't remember, but the only part that was brought over was the interior light that was brought over from one to the other. So there's a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of something that not too many people might know, but if you do look the interior light in a 3650 and maybe like a 6800 or a 6400 or something like that, they would be the same part number, same type. So yeah, that was it. So going back to 1969, so in 1969, John Deere followed its new generation of tractors of the 1960s with a new generation of combines. So these included the 3300, the 4400, 6600, and the 7700. These models were also the first to come with quick attach headers mounting capabilities as standard equipment. So you could take the header on and off, you can up and down the road and tow it behind you, whatever that is standard on all combines these days. So these combines obviously they weren't in Europe from what I know. I don't think they would have been based loosely on say the 55 series that we might have seen. Similar traction system cabs, and that would have been all completely different, and engine positions would have been different, but the traction system would have had a lot of similarities. So in the 1980s then these combines were followed by the 4420, the 6620, the 7720, the 8820. They were essentially updated and improved versions of the previous models with larger capacity, better cab, easier maintenance and service. The 4420 was discontinued in 1984 and replaced by the 4425 combines imported from Germany. So it was also, so yeah, you also had the 6620, the 7720, the 8820. They received the Titan 2 updates. So in 1982, that would have been what we would have known as the 1000 series. So your 1075s, your 1085, 1055s, that line of combine. So then in 1989, Deere replaced them with the 6620, the 7720, and the 8820 with the new line completely redesigned maximizer combines that included the 9400, 9500, the 9600 Walker combines. These combines featured a centre mounted cab, rear mounted engine, and more comfortable seats, and that's what we would have known in the UK and Ireland as the 2000 series. So your 2054, your 2266, and your 2066. They had a much better cab than the old 1000 series and 1100 series, so your 1188s and that I would have learned to drive on. They were very they were very comfortable at the time, but as years went on, when you got into the newer style machines with, you know, no more were you using levers to let the header or the reels up and down. You're into buttons now, and it was just a step in the right direction. And they again obviously were a very popular machine and still are. Yeah, still going strong. A lot of them are still going strong today. So also then in 1989, Deere was inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame. In 1997, Deere celebrated 50 years of self-propelled combine production, and in 1997, models featured the 50th anniversary decal. In 1998, the 9410, the 9510, and the 9610 were introduced. These were essentially the same machines, but with minor upgrades. Deere dealers offered a 10 series upgrades to owners of older 9000 series Maximizer combines. So in 1999 then, Deere introduced the 50 series Maximizer combine. So these machines feature significant cosmetic upgrades, including a more streamlined appearance, improved ergonomics in the cab, PTO shaft style hookup header on the header, and the larger models are available as a rotary machine, which are a complete departure from the combine that Deere had built in the past. So in Ireland and UK, again, that would have been our 9640s and 9680s, that 9000 series combine that would have preceded the T series, the T660s and T560s and stuff like that. That was the 9000 series combines. So just going back a little bit then, the late 1970s, so International Harvester had pioneered the rotary combines with our axial flow, and they were soon followed by other manufacturers like New Holland. But Deere continued to build only conventional Walker combines throughout the 1980s and the 1990s. And in 1999, John Deere introduced that STS machine, so the single tine separator machine, which was, what would you describe as a hybrid combine system that was on its 9550, the 9650 and the 9750 combines, representing a step forward and towards that rotary combine technology. The STS combine used less horsepower and improved material handling, so there was a lot more throughput. Yeah, they were quicker to thresh. The one downside with them was obviously they were a lot harder on straw. So when we use straw for bedding for cattle and for maybe for horses or something like that, whereas that wasn't really an issue in the US, the Walker machine is much easier on straw, whereas the rotary machines, they're a lot more aggressive on straw, and farmers in particular, that like to sell their straw and get a good premium for the straw, like to have it handled nice and delicately when it's going out the back of the combine. But it does have a downside that they wouldn't have as much output as a rotary machine. So New Holland, obviously, they were to the forefront of the development of technology, as were International Harvester, and there was much debate online as to who had the first and who was this, and a lot of arguments get sparked up and who developed it and pioneered it and whatever. But yeah, look, at International and New Holland were the first to get it to the mass market, get it out there. But I'd often have to point out to people that in 1957, John Deere had what was called the XCC1 experimental combine, based on a pull type Model 65 combine, and that was a rotary combine. And they trialled it and tested it, and they went on then later to produce the XCC5, which was built on a self-propelled model that was on a 95 model chassis, and it also was a rotary combine. But for whatever reason within John Deere, political reasons or whatever it was, or management reasons, it never happened. They decided to just park the idea. It wasn't for them at the time, and as I said, it wasn't into the late 1990s that they got back on with the CTS and the STS machines, and obviously now they have a full suite of which are larger combines with rotary systems on them. I still prefer a walker machine, but anyway, yeah, the combine end of things, that anyone that knows me knows that I love the combines. I love the technology, and I love combine. I love driving the combines, and it's one thing that I'm a huge fan of John Deere combines, especially, and I do plan down the line on doing a couple of videos alone on John Deere combines and the technology through the years, and as well as Mannheim, on the factory in Mannheim. And I'd love to do a couple of good videos on that, and perhaps one day write a little book or something on it. Loads of nice colourful pictures of John Deere combines out in the middle of a nice wheat field or something. Good for the soul. So yeah, that's it, lads. That's it for today. That's it for this week. Thank you so much for watching. If you've gotten to the end of the video, fair play to you. It's very, very much appreciated. And look, enjoy your weekend. Hope the sun keeps on shining. If you've got work to do, I hope you get it done on time, and everybody stays safe and look after yourselves, and I will see everybody next Sunday. Thanks for watching.